Valve have officially revealed Half-Life Alyx, and they've revealed that they have multiple Half-Life games in the works. Yes, that franchise is back. New PS5 rumors report its release date and price point, and Steam's Remote Play Together service has entered beta. All of that and more on today's Roundup. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Roundup episode. As always, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell to let the algorithm know that you're enjoying the content. And with that, let's get into the news. As was promised, yesterday saw a full reveal of Half-Life Alyx. It's fully built for VR, seemingly using the full capabilities of the Valve Index's finger tracking, though it is actually going to release on all Steam VR-compatible headsets. Now, story-wise, it is set between the events of Half-Life and Half-Life 2, as it tells the story of Alyx Vance and her father Eli as they're working to establish the resistance to take on the Combine. So yes, Alyx is not Half-Life 3, it's not Episode 3, it instead is bridging the gap between the first two games, which honestly is something I'd like to see. I'd always wondered really how that leap between the two games happened, so that's pretty good. Now it's going to release in March 2020 and pre-purchase are available now, with it being included if you own a Valve Index. Now despite the excitement of the reveal, a question that has been on many minds is why VR? I think many people will see the hardware to be quite niche, won't really be a mainstream thing for most players to actually use, and there's criticism of, some VR games being a little bit more like tech demos. And I think this attitude, this is basically exactly what Valve are hoping to change with Alyx. So in an interview with Jeff Keighley, Valve developer Dario Casali, confirmed that the game would not have support for mouse and keyboard. Half-Life Alyx originated, quote, as an exploration of VR, and so the core experience has been built around that technology. Half-Life Alyx is a game that is essentially VR rather than being superficially VR. That is the quotes from the Valve devs. Now, the volume of different interactions and possibilities within the game, they're only made possible by VR. I think that's very clear if you actually look at the trailer, the amount of work that has went into making Alyx just a really immersive Half-Life VR experience. Now, to work on VR and traditional controls at the same time, Castle noted that they would just end up watering down the VR experience. And from personal experience here, I've loved VR for a long time. The mechanics of picking a bullet up with your fingers and popping it in the back of a gun, that is not happening with a keyboard and mouse. But I can tell you from my experience with Index, just doing that, putting it in the thing, that feels entirely natural on Index. So I can confirm those interactions feel remarkably natural, very easy to use, very immersive, and that's why I'm so darn excited about it. Now, as we discussed in Wednesday's Roundup, Half-Life is a series that's really been built around great technological leaps forward, and it's long been believed that any kind of Half-Life 3 just couldn't really happen without a sort of similar generational advancement. And in an interview with Jeff Keighley, Valve's Robin Walker all but confirmed this. Half-Life Alyx was initially conceived back in 2016, and they admitted that at that time, Half-Life 3 was a terrifyingly daunting prospect. Walker then went on to say, to some extent, VR was a way we could fool ourselves into believing we had a way to do this. Exploring VR as a platform with its own unique potential basically allowed the team therein, to kind of mitigate the pressure of expectations of Half-Life 3 to some extent, and that's what motivated them to just create a VR game that is befitting of the Half-Life name. So, Half-Life Alyx is only the beginning, as we've also found out. In an interview with The Verge, Valve's David Sprayer confirmed that the Half-Life series is back for good. He outlines that many at Valve have been excited to return to the Half-Life universe, and that working on Alyx has only reinforced that feeling at the studio. Now, there was a caveat, though, as Sprayer told The Verge, of course, we'll have to wait and see how people react to Half-Life Alyx once it's out, but we'd love to continue pushing forward. So, hopefully we're getting more Half-Life. It's been far too long. It is one of my favorite IPs, and seeing more of that would truly be wonderful. And if it's going to start off with Half-Life Alyx, then I'm extremely excited. And if that then takes us on to an Episode 3, or maybe a Half-Life 3, that would be one of the better timelines. And next up, speaking of Valve, Steam's much-anticipated Remote Play Together feature has now left beta and is officially live. Now, this service, in short, allows you to play local multiplayer games with your friends online. Now, this service is a huge leap forward for online multiplayer and PC games, in my view, but, a few signature Valve touches, I think they've really made that process a lot more sweet. So, only one player needs to own the game in order to initiate a multiplayer session, right? There's no need for everyone in the party to buy a copy. That's pretty incredible. So the owner hosts the game, and up to 3 other people, more if you've got a fast connection, can then join the game and stream the game to their devices. Now, because no installation is required there, the people joining the host game, they can just do so from any device, not just a PC, but also an Android or iOS device. Now, of course, the quality of that experience on your mobile device or on any other device like that is going to depend on the strength of your internet connection, so that's a major potential pitfall. But still, if things run smoothly, then yeah, you can access an authentic couch co-op experience using your phone. And then Steam have celebrated the launch of Remote Play Together with a local multiplayer spotlight sale. And overall, I've just got to say, I think this is an incredible move. And, I've made games at a game jam, little couch fighting games, right? We did that 2 years ago. But a game like that, it's very easy to just sit down, make it. But actually doing the netcode to allow that to be a proper online multiplayer game, that's really challenging, or at least a lot more challenging. But with something like Remote Play Together, that's actually great for game developers. They can focus on making a game, and something like this could just be a really good value add that every game that you deploy on Steam is going to have. Now, it's not a replacement for doing your own multiplayer, but it's just a nice value add the developers are getting. And with Steam's higher cut, they do have to be doing more things like that, but of course, it's good they're actually doing it. Okay, next, Aaron Flynn, the former BioWare general manager, has gone on record discussing the difficulties of working in the Frostbite engine. Now, in his keynote speech at Reboot developer Red in Canada, Flynn likened EA's internal engine to a Formula 1 racing car, saying that it's very delicate and very hard to manage. He says that Frostbite does, though, have a tremendous amount of power, but that getting the most out of Frostbite is a pretty difficult task. And yeah, it certainly seems so looking at its output. Now, one of the engine's significant drawbacks for Flynn is that it needs a huge crew to actually maintain it, and that this clogs up resources that could be used elsewhere. Now, BioWare's first game in the engine was 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition, and that shipped during Flynn's tenure as general manager. Then the second game was Mass Effect Andromeda in 2017, a game that was, maligned for its many technical problems, and a series that until recently had gone completely dark. Now, while Flynn is very careful to emphasize that he hasn't seen the Frostbite engine since he left Electronic Arts 2 years ago, he does outline that the Frostbite engine made it harder for his team at BioWare to actually produce content, and as a player of BioWare games, I think that's obvious. In what he calls a fascinating phenomenon, Flynn notes that while BioWare had more people and more resources than ever, somehow their output just slowed significantly, and the amount of variables basically involved in working with Frostbite just took a tremendous amount of work for the team to manage. And Flynn admits that their team just, quote, couldn't seem to find their footing with the tools, which is an extremely sad thing, really. It's interesting to note, though, that despite EA's fondness for their internal engine, their most successful games of late were not made using Frostbite. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was built in the Unreal Engine, and Apex Legends was built in Source, I think a very modified version of Source. But some commenters, because of that, have really wondered if that would actually motivate EA to relax their insistence on Frostbite. Sadly, though, that seems like it could be unlikely. It seems like those Respawn Entertainment games are basically like they're using their own engines, because Respawn founders Vince Zampella is pretty firm on not rebooting projects, and he's got a very prominent position at EA. But that said, profitability, that speaks loudly to EA, and in this case, not being saddled with those technical problems, that's helped their team make really high quality games that consumers have liked. So if Frostbite holds their games back and maybe using Unreal makes their games better, then I think the market kind of decides when you actually look at their output and what people buy, because those two games have done really well. So with that, hopefully EA will change their mind and just lax up on their developers. And with that, let's round off the show with quickfire. So the PS5 could be coming out as soon as the 20th of November 2020, if rumors are to be believed, and that's with a price of $499 in the US. Now that's quite interesting. It's $100 more than the PS4 that launched at $399, but that was $2012, so with inflation, that's about $430 now, probably $445 by, late 2020s inflation, so a relatively similar price point for what seems like it's going to be a fairly powerful device. And then finally, a quick update to GOG Galaxy 2.0, which just recently added support for closing third-party launchers when you're actually finished playing a game. So, with this, Galaxy only requires tickbox confirmation to close Battle.net, Epic, Origin, Steam, and Uplay upon completing a session. And that basically just means less clicks for you, a less cluttered experience, and I think that's one of the things really needed to make that kind of uni launcher thing a smooth and good user experience. So, it's great to see that they've got that. I'm definitely going to go and give it a try. Anyway, that's it it for today's episode of The Roundup. There should be another video up today, just going a little bit more into Stadia now that we've actually got one in-house and we've tested it, and that wasn't really a fun experience, but hey, I think it makes for an interesting video. So, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.